Yeah,
would
I can't wait
love.
to interview Elon Musk. You got to interview him. Good luck with getting. I'm sure you can do him. I'm going to reach out to him again. I never get any response, but I'm going to keep trying.
I was always fascinated by the vastness of the universe. When I looked up in the night sky, I wondered what's really out there. Fortunately, I was not the only one who wanted to understand the answer of our question. Many have tried to solve the mysteries of the universe, but still, there are many questions which are yet to be answered. Which is why the space exploration, thus the modern space race, is so important for us. Presently, everything is moving so fast. Our technology is updating very quickly. Our understanding about the universe is improving day by day. This particular trend is now clearly visible in today's aerospace industry. So to discuss about the same, I have invited an expert who not only have the experience but also shares the same passion towards science and astronomy. I am very honored to introduce a software innovator, astronomy and spacecraft, and an award-winning podcast producer, Jeff Fields.
Hello, thanks for joining us today for your space journey.
He hosts science and entertainment podcast, Your Space Journey and the Online Coffee Break on different platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, and the YouTube. On his science podcast, he have interviewed many people, including NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, astronaut Scott Kelly, and CEOs from many aerospace companies. On his entertainment podcast, he interviews musicians, TV, and movie stars. In his recent show, he interviewed the actress Zoe Perry, who plays the role of Sheldon's mom from the series Young Sheldon. You can check out all his episodes from the links given in the description below. Now, let's begin our discussion with the guest of the day.
So, hi, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah. So, I'm really happy to welcome to you to this show. On your show, you talk about space, you talk about astronomy with leaders of the industry. So I think it's just amazing, and I was so excited to talk to you. And
Oh, I'm
at the beginning
excited.
of you asked your guests about their space journey, like how they got introduced to space and how they simply fall into love with the space and astronomy. And now I'm feeling really happy and excited to ask you the same question: how your space journey started?
I love it. Wow. It's such a pleasure because everyone has their own unique answer to why space just means the world to them. Mine's a little different. I grew up, and of course, I do remember going outside at the age of like 5 years old, and when my friends had a telescope and we were looking at the moon, that was my first time looking through a telescope. And he said, "There's people walking on the moon right now." That's how old I am. And I was like, "Really?" And I just thought that was amazing. And it wasn't until a few years later where I got a telescope of my own, and I just fell in love with it. The more I looked, the more I discovered, and it just was amazing to me. And I think it's endless. When I look up, again, I don't see points of dots in the sky. I see other worlds, and I see all that, and it just feels like it's drawing us. They call it the exploration of humanity, where we just want to go out and discover new things. When I look up, I just want to go there, and I want to say, what is out there? What can we see? And so that's kind of where my space passion comes from.
Yeah, I also think it's really very beautiful. I remember when I was first watching like Moon from the telescope. It was so amazing. I watched Moon, I watched Jupiter, then I watched Saturn. Then I
So
realized like
beautiful.
they're just hanging there, like it's just lying in the space. It's not attached to any string or something. It's just lying there. It was so amazing. And the stars are also really beautiful, which show you how big this entire universe is, isn't it? And speaking of stars,
Yeah.
you had many stars on your show, like music stars, science stars, TV stars, on both of your shows. So, is there any favorite moment or any memorable experience with your guests which you would like to share?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we've been fortunate to have so many that have graciously, taking their time to speak with us. And probably one of my
Mhm.
one of my favorites, because as you said, I've got the two shows. One has more entertainment, one has focus on more
Yeah.
space. But it had to be Brian May, Dr. Brian May, I should say. He's from the rock group Queen, so he can play some really great guitar, but he's also an astrophysicist. And I just love how he, kind of combined both of those amazing fields. And what was really neat about his interview is I got to have a phone call with him and just talk to him about both his astronomy and music passions. But it just so happened with the timing where I had a phone call with him, but a week later, I actually got to meet him in person at what's called APL, the Applied Physics Laboratory. And we got to go there. We were there at the same time as the New Horizons spacecraft went by Arrokoth, which was Ultima Thule at the time. So again, a spacecraft investigating the farthest object ever in the solar system, and I happened to be able to sit there and view that with Brian May was just tremendous. So that was probably one of my favorite interviews. Although every person I've ever obviously means a lot to me. It's just that particular one stands out.
Okay. I remember in one of your shows, you interviewed Peter Beck from Rocket Lab,
Rocket Lab, yes.
and yeah, so Rocket Lab has kind of a huge role in making a great deal between United States and New Zealand. Like it's not very usual or common that a private company is making a deal between two nations, and now these countries are operating like cooperating in their space missions. For example, in one of the interviews, Elon Musk from SpaceX said that they simply can't have employees from other nationalities. Means, for example, outside United States. But what I see in case of Rocket Lab, now they are operating from both United States as well as New Zealand. So do
Yeah.
you think in future, as we are seeing like private companies are still now started to dominate the space industry. So do you think there will be an international cooperation between these private companies in future for
Yeah, you
future
mean
projects?
um yeah, I mean I think so because I think oh, there's a couple ways to answer that, I think, because I would say, there's definitely going to be collaboration with the
Mm-hmm.
private interest. And I think Rocket Lab is really unique because again, they're in Australia or New Zealand, and then they just opened up the base here in America. And I think
Yeah.
SpaceX is almost going to do that in another way because they're going to launch the Starship from the ocean, basically from different ocean ports, and they hope to have intercontinental rocket trips from areas just around the globe. So I think there's going to be a lot more of that. And I think it's forcing the major space agencies like, say, NASA, where they realize that the private space companies can innovate so much faster and quicker and, dare I say, better than than the biggest space agencies because they're a little bit more nimble. They can make decisions a little bit quicker. They can afford to fail. And I know, as a matter of fact, obviously Elon Musk, he says, we're not afraid to fail. We just want to fail and keep going and make things, learn from it and do it better. And I know NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine actually commended SpaceX because he said, as NASA is publicly funded here for the United States, they can't afford to fail as much. They have a rocket on the launch pad. It fails. Taxpayers go, "What are you doing with their money?" But if SpaceX does it and it fails, they say, "Well, that was a cool explosion, but when's the next one? Because we want to see that one successfully launched." So it's really neat to see just how private space companies can um, progress and can push us just that much farther. And I think there's going to be greater cooperation just as these years go by. We even call this sort of the commercial space race because they are racing against each other and they are pushing humanity to its beyond its limits for what we can accomplish.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that question was now we are kind of having a dream to go and colonize Mars and Moon, and it's not really like okay we can go on Mars, but to colonize it, it's not possible for any single entity, whether it's a government entity or a private agency. It definitely will need collaborations. Even the ISS also needed like few countries to collaborate, and then we kind of sent parts and then we built it. So, do you think that 2050, what's the timeline is given to have a first colony set up? It's very aggressive, but do you think like we will be able to have a colony, like first phase of it by 2050 on Mars?
Oh, I think that's exciting. And I do think, actually, I think it's kind of neat when we think about just other countries you mentioned, because like the United Arab Emirates, their space industry, they actually set a goal. I can't remember how many years it's going to be, but as a country, they established a goal where they want to have a colony on Mars. Um, but then we have SpaceX and we have Elon Musk, wants to do a colony on Mars. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be that combined effort. And I think it's almost inevitable that we're going to have a colony on Mars because there's so many people, so many countries that want to make that happen. But I
Yeah,
think it's still starting. I'm sort of seeing that, I guess, still the collaboration where we're dealing with, Artemis, sort of, the mission to get people back to the moon, even. And I'm starting to see a lot of cooperation there where, NASA's turning to other partners like the Canadian Space Agency and several private companies. They have three private companies, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Dynetics that are working on lunar landers. So I think we're realizing just the power, the sum of our parts, because together, when we can work with others, we can accomplish so much more than if we just try to take that task on ourselves. And so, do I think SpaceX can do it on its own? Elon Musk is pretty driven individual, and I can't see too much that he can't accomplish on his own because he's got that determination, the drive, and the right people under him. But I also think we could accomplish it faster if we put more resources to it. So I would hope that we can get that colony on Mars quicker rather than later. But I do hope it's something that I can say is inevitable, that we will get there someday and we will establish a human colony on Mars. I hope I'm alive and around to see it because that would be amazing.
and like yeah, you said whatever Elon Musk thinks, he makes it happen. I still remember
Yes.
when he just randomly tweeted about LA traffic, and next thing you know, he started building the boring company. It was
Yes.
so amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, like when we talk about Mars, we kind of tend to forget like we have already visited Moon, and that also in 1969. So, what do you think? What makes more sense to have a colony set up first on Moon and then on Mars? Like we can have a station on the Moon where we can just refuel or resupply the ship, and then we can send them on Mars. Well, the environmental conditions are different, definitely different on both this, like Moon and Mars. But yeah, we will have the technology demonstration first on Moon, and then we can go for the Mars trip.
This sort of tests the patience part of me because I would love to see us go to Mars first, but I understand, the arguments for, if we had a base on the moon, it's only
Mm-hmm.
3 days away. It's only 3 days away for the astronauts to get home if there's any emergencies or just anything. And even though it's still, 300,000 miles, it seems safer, even though it's probably almost just as risky. And then you don't have to worry about the transportation to get there because again, to get there is 3 days as opposed to 6 months on Mars and then getting back. You either have to have a massive spaceship that gets you back faster, no matter where Mars is in orbit, or you need to wait a year and a half until the Earth and Mars line up again to where you can get back in a reasonable amount of time. So I think if we had, at least if we use the moon a little bit to establish, okay, our spacecraft can last this long. We know how to deal with solar flares coming from the sun. We know our astronauts are protected. We're able to reliably regenerate electricity and supplies like water and food for us. I think that would be a good proving ground. I just wish we could make it happen faster so we can get to Mars even faster. I hate to see that delayed. I'd love to see them almost simultaneously, and that's kind of like why I like the Elon Musk drive because he wants to get to Mars, and I know see NASA we want to get to the moon, and I just hope there's sort of a median in there where we get to the moon, but we're ready to go to Mars because Starship is ready at that time. We'll see that. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. In fact, like these private companies are right now. I imagine when I was a kid, this train was going on mobile phone, like smartphones. The technology improved so fast. I still remember, like one of my friend told me about Bluetooth technology, and I was not sure like what it really it is. And now we
Right.
are handling you know smartphone with a great chipset and like having capabilities which computers couldn't do at some point of time. And the
Hmm.
same pace is happening in private companies as well. Like uh, you heard about Elon Musk sending some satellites called Starlink, and next thing you know that they already sent some humans to ISS. It's very
Yes.
fast. Yeah.
It is
Uh,
fast, and it's just such a major impact too. Because even Starlink, I mean, they're already transmitting. They already have people doing beta tests, and they're already finding that it's. I mean, the latest statistic was it's 100 megabytes per second download speed,
yeah.
and there's hardly any latency on it, so it's going to be good enough for gaming. And they only have just over 700 satellites so far, and they're going up to several thousand. So it's just amazing how fast things happen. You're right about that.
Yeah, I remembered like your visit. You have an episode that about your visit to Demo One rocket launch. You visited Demo One, then you visited launch of Falcon 9 as well as Starliner as well from Boeing.
Yes.
So, how was your experience to see those things happening just in front of you live?
It is an excitement that I honestly thought we wouldn't feel again. As I mentioned earlier, when I was 5, I felt the excitement of, oh my gosh, there's people on the moon. And then sort of what I witnessed after that was, I don't want to say it was sort of a stalling space program, but as far as getting people into space, the space shuttle was nice and the space station is spectacular, but there just wasn't that excitement that I think the public is now experiencing these days. And I just think that that is incredible. I think being there, and when I was fortunate to see the demo one and just seeing the enthusiasm of everyone, here we are, we're going to get back into space, we're going to do it from here again. I think that was phenomenal, and I think seeing Boeing Starliner was wonderful again. Just seeing the passion in each of their employees on it. I wish that had been a successful mission for them, in all ways, but it was still neat to see just the drive of people, and people really want to make this happen. And I love that because it's a shared passion, and more people that I'm seeing from around the world are just so excited about this, and it's such a neat thing to see. And I think it's just bright for humanity because it brings us together, no matter where we're from, no matter what gender we are, no matter what color of our skin. Space brings us together. I just think that's remarkable.
Now, along with your like, okay, you have the technological background, but you started your career as a marketing. Then
Mhm.
you moved out to software, and now
Yes.
you are doing podcast, like not just a podcast, an award-winning podcast. So
Thank you.
how that shit happened?
Well, I'm not even sure half the time. No, I went into marketing after college, and I love the field. I loved getting people excited. As a matter of fact, my first job in marketing was at a museum, and we had a planetarium, we had telescopes, we had dinosaur exhibits, and I loved getting people excited about science and excited about learning. Um, but then later on, I guess sort of the internet came along, and I fell in love with that technology, in several ways. Because again, I thought here's another way to kind of get the message out. And then the more I learned about the internet, I started, I did dabble in programming through high school, and I wanted to get back into it. So I got more into the software, and again, fell in love with it because with software, I found that I could sort of like, it's like building with my hands. I could visualize it, and I could build it now. And so I fell in love with that, and that's where the podcast started. They obviously, it was just about 3 years ago, and I wanted to get the message out to some of my clients about technology. So I started the podcast originally called Online Coffee Break, still called that, but I started it with technology in mind, to where I could get information out to people who weren't sure how to use technology to make their business succeed. And from that, it actually kind of evolved. Just after about 10 episodes, I thought, I have a passion in space, and I have a passion for music, and I have a passion for entertainment and movies and books and all this other stuff. And so my wife kind of gave me the idea. She said, it's called Online Coffee Break. It can be about anything you want. So I started doing about anything I wanted. And fortunately, it just really caught on, and it became more and more popular. And after about 2 years of it, I realized I still love space, and I had some very popular space episodes. And that's where I started the second podcast of mine called Your Space Journey. And that one is exclusively focused on space. And what blew me away about that one is the very first episode, I was able to go to NASA headquarters and interview Jim Bridenstine. In the very second episode, I got to interview Rocket Lab's Peter Beck. And since then, it's been Tori Bruno, the CEO of ULA, and just some other phenomenal people. And I've just been so blessed and so amazed to just be able to talk to people. And again, they give you time, and all I'm trying to do is sort of like you want to get the message out. You have this passion, and you just podcasting and YouTube are just great platforms for getting this message out to like-minded individuals. And I'm just so thankful that people actually like at least listening or watching to what I have to do. So it's just a wonderful thing.
This is amazing. So, was there anyone who inspired you to create podcasts? Like you watched him doing it, and then you kind of think, okay, I can also do this.
Um, I don't know if there was any particular person at first. I had felt a desire to do it just because I thought it was intriguing and a good way to get the message out. And I think
Uh,
more or less it was my own worst enemy. I thought, I don't have a voice for this. I don't, why would people want to listen to me, But I guess they call that imposter syndrome. And then you finally get to the point where you're like, why not? If they don't like me, they don't have to listen. I'm not forcing it to anybody. So then you sort of get over that and you, again, hang on to your passion. And it was like, this is my passion. I'm going to get it out. And what are my goals? And my goal was to just take something I like and to get the message out. And I wasn't as concerned about, is this going to be number one is in podcast? Are people even going to listen to it? Because that gets very depressing if you focus on these really high goals and you don't achieve them instead of keeping it real and saying, this is something I want to get the word out for just because it's my passion. And that's where it made it a lot easier. And fortunately, it seems to have worked so far, but we'll see.
I remember in one of your interviews, you said specifically this quote that just because you can press the record button, that doesn't mean your audience will press the play button.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so important because a lot of people, I guess that's another thing too. I did listen to Yes Who Inspired Me. I can tell you who some of the types of podcasts that did inspire me. And it was basically there were some they were just way too long. It was an hour of someone just talking about themselves. And so mine in particular, I wanted to interview other people and I don't say much about, what I mean, I say a little bit about what I feel, but I want to talk about my audience and or my guests and let them talk about their passion. And that's really for me where it started. Just kind of letting them talk and listening and just it's kind of like you approach someone you're really impressed by and you want to get their autograph, but instead of getting their autograph, you have a 15-minute conversation with them. And for me, that's just as rewarding, if not more so.
And it's so amazing that without having a particular background, you just started the show and suddenly you started reaching out to people and you started having really, really very good podcasts. So how did you reach out to guests in first place? Like how you reached out to first person? What was it?
Sure. Yeah, the first time kind of amazed me because when I started, I was just focusing on technology podcasts, and that was when my wife said they can be about anything. And we were on vacation, and I remembered that I had an astronaut that I was friends with on LinkedIn, Dr. Story Musgrave, and I thought I'm gonna just ask him. So I went inside the house and I emailed him and said, "Would you like to be a guest on my podcast?" And he responded within 10 minutes and said yes. So I was totally amazed. And so I reached out to another astronaut, Scott Kelly, who had spent a year in space aboard ISS. And actually, he was coming out with a new book. So I reached out to his agent and said, "Would astronaut Kelly like to be a guest too?" And I didn't hear back immediately from him. But when we got back on vacation, his agent emailed me in the morning and said, "Yes, Scott Kelly would like to be a guest on your podcast. Are you available in 2 hours?" And so I was like, yes, I can. And so I interviewed him. He was the very first guest I interviewed. Interviewed Story Musgrave the next day, and they just inspired me because I thought, here are two very busy, very, in my opinion, heroes of mine that said yes. So I'm just going to start asking other people. The worst they can do is say no, and that's no big deal. But I was surprised how many people say yes. So that encouraged me to this day. I will ask. If they say no, that's fine. But a lot of them say yes. And so I just keep asking.
Well, The reason why I ask you that question, because this is the first time I'm reaching out to someone, and now here I'm having an interview with you. So I just would like to thank you for your time.
Oh, I'm honored. Again, I commend you for reaching out because I've seen your show and I think it's a great program too. And I'm honored that you consider me worthy enough to be on your show. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, another question I would like to ask you.
Sure.
You have another show called Online Coffee Break, where you have some entertainment thing as well. You are going to have an interview with Zoe Perry, the young Sheldon's mother. So that show is really like inspiring. The Big Bang Theory and then Young Sheldon was really inspiring for many people, and it
Mhm.
kind of spread an awareness about the science and how research takes place. So apart from podcasting, are there any of your favorite shows or movies, whether it's a science fiction or anything else?
Oh wow, I'm of course a huge Star Trek and Star Wars fan. I love sci-fi movies. I love inspirational movies too. It's interesting that you brought up Young Sheldon because I'm also a fan of, I guess, the shows that promote autism. I have a son who's autistic, and I think we can say that Sheldon has sort of qualities that in some people would put him on the autism spectrum just because of the way he is. Um, but I'm also very impressed too by just how that awareness is changing out there because I think there's so many kids out there that they might have not have the greatest social skills, but they're so smart and they have these incredible minds where they can solve major problems. And so I like a lot of shows that talk about that too. But yeah, I mean, just down to it, when it comes down to it, I turn on the TV set. Oh, give me a good sci-fi show any day, and I'll watch it over and over again.
I love the movie Martian. One reason behind
Yes,
that is like I remember in one of your interviews, you said that you talked with the writer of it, and
Andy
I
Weir.
really liked the story. So why? Because one thing, it's sci-fi and it's about Mars, so it's definitely a win-win situation. But the
Yes,
second thing is how he actually uses technology for surviving. Like he is a botanist, but then he uses programming, he uses mechanical engineering, then he has to learn from basics like ASCII and all.
yeah.
So what I learned is nowadays many students are, whenever entering into colleges or schools, they are just thinking about their career just as a job. For example, when I started working in a software company, one thing I just knew that I just want to create some application and people will use it for a single purpose. But what I don't know is what research and like scientific research and development could do to it, like how it all started in the first place. That movie kind of depicted it like in a whole picture, in a whole big picture.
Yeah.
So, what would be your suggestion for those students or those people who are just entering into corporate world, like how they can approach towards research-based career? Because many people want it, but they don't have good idea unless and
You know,
until they are motivated.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just saw a post on LinkedIn from a person the other day, and they had
Mhm.
said that they had wanted to pursue a career in space, and they actually went to their college advisor, and at the time, the advisor was like, it's hard to get a career in aerospace. It's just not a popular field, and so the advisor tried to steer them otherwise. Well, they disregarded their advice and from the advisor, and they pursued a career in aerospace, and they just landed a job at Blue Origin. Um, so to me, I take that as you've got to pursue your passion. If you're passionate about science and technology, um, you got to go for it because you don't know what doors are going to open down the road. There's so many times where you're just the goal might be in the back of your head, but you're not clear on how you're going to get there. And having that good science and technology foundation is just going to enable you to learn more about it. And you never know where the doors are going to open up down the way. Because I think that people, someone mentioned this today, SpaceX is working obviously on Starship now down in Boca Chica, Texas. And some of the people who are working out there kind of call themselves space cowboys. They came from a background of building water towers, and now they're building rocket ships. So again, I'm sure when they learned how to fabricate metal, they weren't thinking that someday they're going to be designing a rocket ship that could fly to Mars. So you never know. You never know what you're going to be doing. But again, if you just focus on excellence and doing the best that you can, you have no idea what doors they're going to open up. And you don't even have to pursue a career in science and technology. If you want to be in space, they hire legal people, marketing people, graphic artists, all kinds of people. And just seeing now, just all the people that are being hired by SpaceX, by Blue Origin, by all these private rocket companies around the world, it is a wonderful time to get into it. But again, having a solid background right now in science and technology, I just encourage people to do that because that will definitely open up doors all over the place.
Wonderful. Now, just the last question for you.
Sure.
Like, how do you manage it all? Like, you still are having podcasts going, you have interviews with newer guests, you have your own company as well. So how you manage everything?
Sometimes not very well. It
Oh,
is overwhelming at times, and I've just learned to I try to schedule all my interviews at once, where I can take a day, like an afternoon, and have like three interviews, and record several over a several week period, record a lot of interviews, and then sort of sit back, and then when I have time after work and all my other responsibilities, edit these and get them out and schedule them. It's not very easy, but it's something where it's good time management because I have a family too. I
mhm.
hate to say this, but the pandemic lately has actually gave me a little bit more free time because I'm not traveling as much to work and back, so that frees up some time. And it's also opened up the door for guests too, because a lot of guests aren't as busy. Say the musicians and actors and actresses, they're not filming right now or
Mhm.
recording, so a lot of them have availability right now too. So it's a very tough balancing act, but I've learned, especially now into my third season, approaching my fourth season, to just balance things and never let those go too much of my time, but to take a step back and to make sure I'm still having fun. Because the first thing I said about podcasts is the minute that I'm not having fun anymore is the minute I'm stopping. So I have to make sure that I'm having a good time and not impacting my work or my family.
Correct. Actually, it was really a very learning experience for me. And I hope that for my viewers also, it will be a learning experience. I got to know so many things from you. In fact, one of the best thing I got is confidence to reach out to people and ask them for an interview or for like just an advice. So thank you so much for it.
Oh,
I
thank
really appreciate that. Yeah,
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out to me. And again, just keep asking people because you're doing a great job, and your listeners and viewers out there too. You can give so much to them. So just keep going the way you're going. And thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Well, that was my conversation with Chuck Waves. I just want to thank him that he took some time out of his extremely busy schedule and decided to join. If you haven't already listened or watched his podcast, then just give a visit. Links are given in the description below. And as I said at the beginning of the video that we have to get Elon Musk on the show. So for that, drop as many likes as possible on this video, share it with your friends, family or just anyone you know. And if in case Elon did notice it and decided to swing by, you shouldn't miss it, right? So just subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. In case if I am uploading new videos with some more guests, you will get a direct notification. On this note, I would just like to thank you all for watching this video and signing up for the day. See you in the next one.